the health of the ecosystem is a measure of the variety of abiotic. So there you go, biodiversity, genetic.
So the type of biodiversity are genetic diversity, diversity, and functional diversity. In biodiversity identified how much resource and diversity an ecosystem has in terms of both the benefit and restore diversity. A more diverse ecosystem will therefore have more resources to meet and overcome events such as drought, famine, and extinction of some species. So there are several components of biodiversity, each indicating the genetic, the species, and resource diversity in a region. The types of biodiversity are genetic diversity, species diversity, community diversity, or ecosystem diversity, and functional diversity. Genetic diversity refers to the variation in the genes of a species of individuals. So how they are closely related to the members of a species in an environment. So it describes how closely related the members of one species are in a given system. No two individuals belonging to the same species are exactly similar. For example, in the species of human being, each human being shows a lot of diversity to another human being. People differ to evaluation. If all the members have many similar genes, the species has low variation. So genetic diversity. The genes are considered to be part of the DNA, which dictates traits or characteristics of distinct traits and make the micro and increases the of preservation and perpetuation of a new population. The species with low genetic diversity may pose a threat to organisms in the same species if they have the same undesirable traits, such as those that make them vulnerable to diseases and change in an environment. Comes now the second, the species diversity. The humans are member of this species, Homo sapiens. This refers to the variability of different aspects represented in a community. In each ecosystem, there are different species that interact with one another. This level of biodiversity involves species richness, or the number of species in a given region, and their abundance relative in that particular area. So some ecosystems may have many more species than another. In some ecosystems, one species has grown so large that it dominates the natural community. So a large number of species can help an ecosystem recover from ecological threats, even if say species go extinct. So the number of species in a region varies widely depending upon the varied environmental conditions. For example, it is usually observed that civilizations residing beside water bodies show more species diversity than one compared to areas away from the water bodies. Third, we have community diversity. Community diversity refers to the variety of ecosystems in a given region. A region may either have several ecosystems or just one. A region with several ecosystems may be able to provide more resources to help native species survive, especially when one ecosystem is being threatened by drought or disease. An ecosystem usually houses a population of wide range of species that interact with one another, thereby creating a biological community. The interaction and survival of this community is greatly affected by abiotic factors such as temperature, air, pH level, water, and light. For example, a mountain area that has lakes, forests, and grassland would have a higher biodiversity. Next, we have functional diversity. So this refers to the range of things an organism does in communities and ecosystems. It relates to the manner by which species behave, obtain food, and use the natural resources in an ecosystem. In general, it is presumed that an ecosystem with high species diversity is more functionally diverse because there are more species with different traits. So understanding an ecosystem functional diversity can be useful to ecologists trying to conserve or restore it from the damages it suffered, because knowing the behavior and role of a species can point to gaps in a food cycle or ecological features. Comes now the importance of biodiversity. At the most fundamental level, biodiversity is important to human beings because it is the source of food, shelter, medicine, and clothes. It is where we derive raw material for various activities that sustain us, such as in commercial and industrial activities. Biodiversity is of central importance to and largely determines health, culture, food security, and environmental conditions. So it is the life support system of all living beings. So what are the importance of biodiversity? They are as follows. First, support food security, dietary health, and livelihood sustainability. Second, provide important resources for medical research, both traditional and modern medicine. Third, plays a role in the regulation and control of infectious diseases. Fourth, essential for climate change adaptation, has social, cultural, and spiritual importance in the communities. Let's them first. Biodiversity supports food security, dietary health, and livelihood sustainability. So biodiversity is a source of our food. The food that human beings and wildlife consume originate from the natural ecosystem. Wide range of animals and plant species form the basis of our nutrition, which in turn can promote our health, protect us from diseases due to lack of vitamin deficiency. Also, loss of agricultural biodiversity can therefore threaten health, livelihood sustainability, and security of food and nutrition. Next, we have biodiversity provides resources for medical research, both traditional and modern medicine. So medicines are largely sourced from ecosystems, herbs, plants, and minerals. and are the product of ecosystem and are used by human to produce medicine. Yes, Mutas? Yes. So people around the world have been acknowledged by modern researchers. So that the Department of Health of the Philippines had endorsed 10 medicinal plants to be used
Sorry
as
po.
herbal med. Yes? Yes, Mutas, ano yun? So the Department of Health of the Philippines has endorsed 10 medicinal plants to be used as herbal medicine. Among them are, we have Lagundi, Tambong, Acapulco, Nyugan, Chaang Gubat, Ampalaya, Yerba Buena, Bawang, Pulisimang Bato, and Bayaba. First, we have Lagundi. Scientific name is Vivek Lagundo. It is used for the relief of cough and asthma. Lagundi can be bought in the drugstore, and it has different flavors that has been taken or taken in by the baby. They have uses as cough syrup used for cough remedy. Next, we have Sambong, scientific name Blumea balsamifera. This is a diuretic that helps in the excretion of urine stone and can be used as an edema. Another we have Acapulco, scientific name Cassia alata. It is used to treat ringworm and fungal infection. Next we have Nugan, scientific name Quisqualis indica, used for effective elimination of intestinal worm, particularly the ascaris and the trichina. Next we have Chaang Hubat, scientific name Erythrea microphylla lung, used for treating intestinal motility and can be used as mouthwash since it contains fluoride. Next, we have Ampalaya. Scientific name is Mobordica charantia, used for treatment of diabetes mellitus for non-insulin dependent patients. Next, we have Yerba buena. Scientific name is Clinopodium douglasii. It is used as analgesic and for relieving body aches and pain. Next, we have bawang. Scientific name, Allium sativum. It could reduce cholesterol in blood, hence control blood pressure. Then we have Pulisimang bato. Scientific name is Peperomia pellucida. This is an effective in fighting arthritis and gout. Then we have Bayabas. Scientific name is Cerium guajava. It is used as an antiseptic to disinfect wounds. It can also be used as mouthwash to treat tooth decay and gum infection. Another is biodiversity plays a role in the regulation and control of infectious diseases. So biodiversity loss and ecosystem change can usually increase the spread of infectious diseases in plant, animals, and human beings such as SARS, Ebola, and others. Even with advances in synthetic chemistry, which provides many biologically active molecules, pharmaceuticals derived from nature remain an important part of pharmaceutical practice today. All organisms have developed compounds to protect themselves against infectious diseases and to interact with individuals of their own species or other species. So these molecules coming from all organisms such as bacteria, fungus, animal and plants, in terrestrial, marine, and extreme ecosystem represent an amazing diversity that has been tested in the field for millions of years by involving millions of individuals. However, only a very small subset of plant and marine organisms has been investigated for novel bioactive components. Furthermore, it is estimated that less than 1% of bacterial species and only 1% of fungal species are known. Those which have not yet been identified could be sources of novel molecules. Observations of natural medicine practices used by indigenous people have led to the discovery of many drugs. And the most well-known and widely used pharmaceuticals are quinine, which used as model to synthesize anti-malarial drug, daclorquine and metfloquine, and artemisinin, identified as a potent anti-malarial drug by the Chinese scientists. Animals also are considered to be source of inspiration for drugs against infectious diseases. For instance, compounds of the sponge Cryptophea crypta inspired the elaboration of antiviral medication, such as AZT used in the treatment of HIV or the AIDS. So observing great apes medicate themselves through plant, they eat also could help to reveal a new active component. So to illustrate better the importance of biodiversity, a video presentation on COVID-19 will be shown. Another, biodiversity is essential for climate change adaptation. Biodiversity plays an important role in regulating the climate, thus making a key contribution to climate change mitigation and adaptation. At the same time, climate change affects biodiversity in multiple ways through complex interactions among and between species and their habitats. Therefore, it is possible to address biodiversity loss without addressing climate change, but it is equally impossible to tackle climate change without addressing biodiversity loss. Next, we have biodiversity has social, cultural, and spiritual importance with the communities. So, sustainable management of biodiversity can help to provide essential resources for promoting health and rebuilding livelihood in post-crisis situation. The rural communities and the people are dependent upon ecosystem for their livelihood security. So there must be healthy ecosystem to provide material buffers against natural disaster such as flood, drought, and landslide. So people who have been displaced by disaster are more susceptible to illness and dependent on ecosystem services for food, shelter, and medicine. We now proceed to the threats to biodiversity. The threat to biodiversity are as follows. We have habitat destruction, overexploitation, overpopulation, invasive alien species, and global climate change. So there are different factors that negatively affect biodiversity. The effects vary, with some affecting only up to organismal level, while some may affect a whole ecosystem. First, we have habitat destruction. So habitat destruction or habitat loss is one of the biggest threats to biodiversity. In fact, it is the number one reason species go extinct. Anthropogenic activities like urbanization, construction, logging, reclamation, industrialization, and activities that result to a natural increase in the concentration of environmental compound destroy habitat, consequently posing the loss of biodiversity. Next, we have overpopulation. The 2019 United Nations report on global biodiversity declines the report that humans are speeding extinction and altering the natural world at an unprecedented pace. Overpopulation. It is estimated that three-quarters of all land environment and two-thirds of all marine environment have been severely altered by human activities over the past 5 decades, leading to unprecedented rate of change. As a result, 1 million species are now threatened with extinction. As human population increases, the demand for human needs and wants also increases. The human overpopulation poses a threat to biodiversity. So it is a couple with unsustainable pattern of consumption and poor government policies as regard food, security, and conservation. However, biodiversity loss cannot be blamed solely on individual consumption practices. Industrialization, urbanization, and unsustainable practices imposed by big corporations and even carbon majors, that is, 100 companies responsible for the 71% of the world's global emission, contributes more to the decline of biodiversity. Comes now over exploitation. Overexploitation means harvesting species from the wild at rates faster than natural population can recover. Overfishing and overhunting are both types of overexploitation. It is estimated that about a third of the world's endangered vertebrates are being threatened by overexploitation. So, gathering and exploitation of huge amount of flora and fauna do not only prevent their proliferation, but also threaten biological diversity. The unsustainable exploitation of natural resources is often attributed to the changing pattern of the human consumption. There are two examples of overexploitation, namely overhunting and overfishing. Overhunting defined as the relentless chase of wild animals for the purpose of killing or catching them for food or game. Overfishing is the removal of a species of fish from a body of water at a rate that the species cannot be replenished in time, resulting either becoming depleted or underpopulated in that given area. Gathering prohibited and endangered species is punishable by law. Overhunting, overfishing, or overcollecting of a species can quickly lead to its decline. So changing consumption patterns of humans is often cited the key reason for this unsustainability of natural resources. Another we have invasive alien species. Alteration and sudden changes in ecosystem contribute to species and habitat loss. Introduction of invasive alien species accidentally or deliberately that is not endemic is that in that habitat, not in the normal distributional range, could threaten other organisms, especially if the species introduced have the same ecological needs, such as those naturally existing in that ecosystem. Invasive alien species are the second largest threat to biodiversity after habitat loss. Alien or introduced species include any species that are introduced into new habitat by human intervention. These are usually invasive or aggressive. And as competitors, predators, pathogens, and parasites, alien species have invaded almost every type of native ecosystem. It could result not only in decline of endemic species, but also in extinction. The invasive alien species could also take over the habitat by rapid proliferation if it does not have any natural predator in the receiving area. Comes now the global climate change. The climate change, specifically the global warming, is causing huge changes to biodiversity. So the increase in global temperature could be detrimental to some species. Animals and plants that live on mountain tops and are adapted to cold temperatures may soon find themselves out of habitat. As temperature warm, the species that currently live in more extreme climate will adapt or die out. For the marine life, the increased temperature and lower pH due to carbon dioxide absorption in the ocean could be disadvantageous. Climate change and variability cause biodiversity loss and may even result to the extinction of species and population if they are not provided with enough time in order to adapt to the changing climatic conditions. So ecosystems have come and gone, and species routinely go extinct. Rapid man-made change speed up the process without affording ecosystems and species the time to adapt. Example, the rising ocean temperature and diminishing Arctic sea ice affect marine biodiversity can help keep vegetation low, having global implications. What climate variability and climate change pose biodiversity loss. Species and population may not be exist permanently if they are not provided with enough time in order to adapt to the changing climatic conditions. Comes now the interrelatedness of society, environment, and health. So living organisms are dependent on their environment in terms of living reproduction. And access to a sufficiently varied nutritious food is considered to be the key factor to human survival. And biodiversity is considered to be vital to a human being's nutrition because it is the primary determinant of food production. Nutrition, biodiversity, and health are all interrelated and intersectional. A healthy environment means a robust and well-preserved biodiversity. An ecosystem with healthy and diverse species consequently results to a healthy diet of the population with a need for adequate level of nutrient intake having been met. So food production is considered to be just one of the important services the ecosystem usually provides. So unsustainable and intensified food production to the use of pesticides, introduction of alien crop varieties, overfishing, dynamite fishing, game hunting affect the natural pattern of organisms and impact nutritional status and human health. So the need of living organisms such as air, water, food, and habitat are provided by their environment. So the humans have evolved because access to these basic needs have been greatly improved. And because the environment is vital to and sustain human life, it can also cause the opposite. Biodiversity loss that causes lack of basic necessities significantly tip the scale of human life viability towards mortality. The destruction of ecosystems and environmental hazards increases the risk of diseases like cancer, heart diseases, respiratory ailments, and many more. So the relationship among human health, the environment, and biodiversity loss is substantial and complex. And with the significant biodiversity loss, we are now experiencing human health, biological biodiversity, and the environment is greatly being compromised. Therefore, climate change poses a serious threat to human health and subsistence. For example, access to food is limited because farming systems are significantly disrupted and nutrients found in food are also being reduced. So biodiversity increases resilience and is key to adapting a new environmental condition. So the complex relationship between health and environment usually raises many ethical and social dilemmas because it forces people to choose between competing values. So climate change brought about by anthropological activities pose a significant negative effect on human health and the environment. So one of the steps to significantly slow down the worsening of climate change depends on the change in practices and operations of corporations, as research found that it is only 100 corporations called the carbon majors who are responsible for 71% of the global emission. So in environmental legislation, that is creation of law and formulation of policies, social justice, and human rights issues comes into play as well. The legislators, called the lawmakers, and the policymakers shall always give the utmost importance to the rights and condition of the most vulnerable. Communities in most vulnerable sectors are exposed to greater environmental risks. So biodiversity loss can be prevented through the following: proper legislation, implementation of fair, reasonable, and human rights-based laws and policies, appropriate reserves with adequate government support, education and awareness raising, sustainable use of biodiversity, especially by big corporations and military industrial complexes. Community-based programs can be encouraged as well as people involvement. However, change in consumption practices cannot be limited only to individual level. Corporations with most significant carbon footprints and those most responsible in the generation of carbon emission shall change their practices with their corporate social responsibility always in mind. Comes now the biodiversity in the Philippines. Did you know that the Constitution of the Philippines affirms a state policy in the people's right to health and right to a balanced and healthful ecology? Article 2 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, that is our current constitution, and the fundamental law of the land provides that, Section 15, the state shall protect and promote the right to health of the people and instill health consciousness among them. Article 16, the state shall provide and protect and advance the right of the people to a balanced and healthful ecology in accord with the written and harmful and harmony of the nature. So let's have one case of Aposa versus Sakura, pertaining to the right to a balanced and healthful ecology, also intergenerational responsibility. So the petitioner, meaning to say, the one who filed the case here, were all minors. They are represented by their parents. So they filed a case against Secretary of the ANR because he issued timber license agreements to various corporations to cut the aggregate area of 3.89 million hectares for commercial logging purposes. The petitioner alleged that they are entitled to the full benefit, use, and enjoyment of the natural resource treasure that is the country's virgin tropical forest. They also allege that they have a clear constitutional right to a balanced and healthful ecology and are entitled to protection by the state, that is, we are referring to the government and its capacity as parent patriarch or parent of the nation. Most importantly, they claim that they were representing their generation as well as generations yet unborn, and that the act of the Secretary of the DNR in allowing the TLA account holders to cut and deforest the remaining forest constitutes a misappropriation and impairment of the natural resources property we hold in trust for the benefit of the minor petitioners and succeeding generations. The petitioner prayed that judgment be rendered, ordering that the TLAs shall be cancelled and no new ones be issued. So the Supreme Court ruled that the petitioners have the right to a balanced and healthful ecology under the Constitution, and the DENR has a clear duty to protect and advise the said right because it is the primary government agency responsible for governing and supervising the exploration, utilization, development, and conservation of the country's natural resources as provided by the law. So that the Supreme Court also ruled that the petitioners have the right to file the case for themselves, for others of their generation, and for succeeding generations. Their personality to sue in behalf of the succeeding generations can only be based on the concept of intergenerational responsibility insofar as the right to a balanced and healthful ecology is being concerned. So the court further elicited that every generation has the responsibility to the next to preserve the rhythm and harmony for the full enjoyment of a balanced and healthful ecology. And because of the case, the Philippine government had inventoried the remnant old growth forests and restricted logging in those areas. So the case is recognized in its contribution in the development of international environmental law. Comes now the biodiversity in the Philippines. So the country is a biodiversity hotspot and hosts more than 52,177 described species. So according to the DENR, Biodiversity Management Bureau, the Philippines contains two-thirds of the Earth's biodiversity and 70% of the world's plants and animal species due to its geographical isolation, diverse habitat, and high rates of endemism. And as of 2019, there is a total of 1,437 terrestrial mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians that are listed as threatened. 984 species of wild flora in the Philippines are also being threatened for possible extinction. So, the alarming rate of destruction of the important resources pose a large number of endangered and threatened species. And the introduction of a number of alien species also expose the Philippine rich biodiversity to a lot of threats. So at the start of our lecture on biodiversity, you learned that the Philippines is home to one of the most diverse coral reef species and coral reef fish species, being part of the Coral Triangle. And to learn about the current condition of the country's maritime life and underwater resources, let us now watch the next video.
Walang bayad, walang hidden na halaga. Libre lang po ito sa isang simpleng
At sa mga unang nabigyan namin, sana ingatan at pahalagahan niyo yan. Panlimang batch na po ng pamigay ngayon. 20 ulit ang masaswerteng makakuha.
suki. May good news kami para sa inyo. Napakilala ang Damascus necklace mula Japan. Giganting kwintas na inspired sa Damascus steel, dinala sa kakaibang pattern at tibay na
Okay, attendance muna tayo. Agapay? Agapay?
Present ma'am, present po.
Arsena?
Present po.
Arsino? Articona? Barlaan?
Present po ma'am.
Barot?
Present po ma'am.
Bayabas?
Ang article na po present.
Bayabas? Castro?
Present po Castro ma'am.
Cruz?
Present po ma'am.
Tuvin? Dabalos? De Venecia?
Hello po ma'am, present po.
De Vera?
Present po.
Reco?
Present po.
Hener?
Present po ma'am.
Gonzales? Hernandez? Umamil?
Present po ma'am.
Present po, ma'am.
Lorzano?
Lorzano, present po ma'am. Present po.
Luna? Luna? Magnifico?
Present po.
Makahibag?
Present po ma'am.
Maliksi? Malyari?
Present po. Present po.
Mendoza?
Present po ma'am.
Mutas?
Present.
Ba't ka nagtataas ng kamay? Kanina.
Ma'am, napipindot po
Ma'am,
kami
present
kasi
po, ma'am.
nasa biyahe po ako.
Palmes? Porcalia?
Present po.
Rajay?
Present po ma'am.
Ramirez?
Present po.
Rodota? Sancho?
Present po.
Sarmiento?
Ma'am, good morning, ma'am. Present po, Sir Miento.
Talod?
Present po, ma'am.
Teodoro?
Present po, Chidoro.
Tolentino?
Present po, ma'am, Tolentino.
Karate?
Present po.
Arsino? Articona?
Ma'am, present po.
Bayabas?
Ma'am, present po Bayabas.
Tuvin?
Present po ma'am.
Dabalos? Gonzales? Luna? Maliksi? Palmes? Radota?
Ma'am, present po Redota.
Sancho?
Ma'am,
meron
present po.
na. Sino?
Maliksi po ma'am, present po.
Okay, Maliksi. So, ang wala ay si Arsino? Dabalos? Gonzales? Luna? Palmes?
Ma'am,
Okay.
present po, Dabalos. Nagluloko lang po yung device ko po.
Okay, Dabalos. So, sa next meeting ay online din tayo, no? Online din tayo sa next meeting.
Yes po.
Okay, so we already have stated that in the ecosystem is divided into environment and the interacting growth. That the environment that there are two main components in the environment to have the living things, that is the biotic, and the non-living things, that is the abiotic. So biotic can be classified into producer, consumers, decomposer, while in the non-living things, the abiotic, there are three types. We have the climatic factor that is related to climate, plant, soil, and air. We also have the inorganic factor that is present in the environment. Examples would be the calcium, magnesium phosphate, minerals that are usually present in air and soil. And then the third one is the organic. Under the organic, we have the carbohydrates, the vitamins, the proteins, and the lipids. So we are now in chapter 10, and that is modern biotechnology. So this chapter usually gives an overview of the 3DNA-based tools of modern biotechnology. Namely, we have the genetic engineering, the gene therapy, and the cell therapy. Usually, this chapter contains two lessons: the genetic engineering and the gene and cell therapy. Under the genetic engineering, we'll be discussing the overview, genetically modified organism, the GMO in the Philippines, and ethical issues. Regarding now the gene and the cell therapy, we'll be discussing now the overview, the gene therapy, the stem cells, the cell therapy, and of course, the ethical issues. For our specific objectives, at the end of this lesson, you should be able then to trace the development of modern biotechnology, differentiate genetic engineering, gene therapy, and cell therapy, describe genetically modified organisms, explain the processes involved in gene therapy and cell therapy. Also, to identify the ethical issues related to the 3DNA-based tools of modern biotechnology. So from here ay mag-i-start tayo next meeting sa chapter 10. Any question, class? Online tayo, ha? Medyo i-ano natin kasi walang internet. Naka-data lang ako. Any question?
Wala po, ma'am.
Okay. So see you next meeting, class, and stay safe always. Ingat kayo.
Ingat.
Ma'am,
Yes?
ma'am, about po pala sa fashion show, may specific directions or rubrics na po.
Anong direction? Maghanap kayo. Dalawa.
Sa fashion show po.
Oo.
Tapos after po nun, ilang minutes po dapat yung video?
5 minutes, but not more than 10 minutes.
So bali ano lang po, description lang po ng clothing style po ng napili naming civilization po.
At saka magpa-fashion show.
Okay po. Sige, thank you po.
Okay, o ingat.
Alam po.
Okay, ingat kayo.
Bye-bye po. Bye-bye, ma'am.